Tutorial Tuesday, everyone. And today we are talking about Basic Flute Maintenance 101. But before we get started, I wanted to share something with you. One of my flute students drew a picture of me this last week, and I just thought it was the sweetest thing in the whole wide world. So I wanted to share that with you. I have a lot of students that come to me with problems regarding their flute. And you know, probably 98% of their problems could be solved if they would just learn how to take care of their flute in the first place. So the first things first, if you missed last week's tutorial, last week I talked about how to clean the flute pads. And in fact, just this last week, I had a new student come to me and tell me one of their old flute teachers told them to clean their pads using a $1 bill and pressing down and pulling out with a dollar bill. First of all, you don't know where this dollar bill has been. And it's probably dirty and you probably don't want to stick it underneath your pads to clean them. So I highly recommend watching that tutorial if you haven't seen it. Flute maintenance tip number 1. Whenever you are done practicing your flute, you should go find this. Some of you have never seen this before. If that's the case, shame on you. It's called a cleaning rod. Mine is made out of wood, but some of yours may be made out of metal. And what you're going to want to do is get a big handkerchief, stick it through the little opening, pull it through, and then wrap the handkerchief around the rod. Okay? If you do not wrap the handkerchief around the rod, say you leave it like this, and then you go to clean your flute, you could end up scratching the inside of your flute, especially if your cleaning rod is made of metal. And then another tip, I would recommend washing your handkerchief regularly. Another thing to consider is to brush your teeth before practicing your flute. That way, if you've eaten something sugary, it won't cause your pads to get sticky or dirty. Another flute tip, I highly recommend washing your hands before playing the flute. I've had several students that are in elementary school band, and sometimes they're out playing on the playground and then they pick up their flutes and they start practicing at school, and some of their flutes have gotten really sticky or dirty. So I try to encourage them, if they can, to please go and wash their hands. Even if you do wash your hands before playing the flute, sometimes you can still get oils from your fingers, things like that on your flute. So you definitely want to consider getting some type of flute cleaning cloth. Never a silver polishing cloth, but some type of cloth that's made specifically for the flute. This blue one that I have is from the Nagahara Flute Company, and then this red one is from the Muramatsu Flute Company. It doesn't matter, they all work the same. You can either go to your local music store or order one online. Common problem that I see with students quite often is whenever they hold their flute, they do not hold it around the barrel up here. Instead, they grab the flute from around here and they press really hard among the rods and the mechanism. You could actually end up bending your flute keys and your mechanism. So you never want to grab from here or put tons of pressure along here. You always want to hold your flute around the barrel, right here where there are no rods that can be bent. And going along with that same principle, I have seen several band students over the years, they get a new piece of music in band and then they stick it in their flute case and shut it. Okay, you never want to do that because again, you could end up hurting the flute mechanism. What you want to do is close the case and take a band folder, a band bag, anything to put your extra pieces of music or flute accessories in, because you never want to jam lots of items in your flute case. This is for your flute and your flute only. Another good tip for flute maintenance is you really should take your flute in about once a year to get it maintained. I do it once a year. I take it to a professional flute technician and I get a basic, what's called an oil adjustment and cleaning. And that way you can ensure that your flute is working properly. And going along with that, if you play on a semi-professional or professional level flute, you're probably going to want to send it to a technician that specializes in that brand. For example, I play on the Muramatsu brand flute, so I send it to a Muramatsu technician. Likewise, if you play on a Haynes or a Powell or a Nagahara, you're going to want to send it to one of those technicians. Now, if you play on a beginning level or intermediate student level flute, you are going to want to just ask the local flute teacher in your area or talk to some of the band students and find out maybe where they take their flute, and you can usually get a good referral that way. Another myth that I hear from a lot of students is their band directors told them to put Vaseline on the flute mechanism. That's a really bad idea. You never want to put Vaseline or grease on your flute. Again, you want to take it to a professional to get it tuned, oiled, and adjusted. Another smart tip is to never ever leave your flute out for long periods of time. Let's say you're done practicing, then you should always put it in your flute case. But unfortunately, over the years, I've seen lots of students, they leave their flute on the couch or on their bed or on the table or on the dresser, and either one of their siblings comes and knocks it off, or it rolls off and falls and then it breaks, and they're coming to their next lesson and they're crying and I have to fix their flute. So please, please put your flute away when you're done practicing. Even if you're going to take a break, you should always put your flute away. Now, let's say you need to go to the bathroom or get a drink of water. I highly recommend getting a flute stand. That way you can put your flute on your little stand, and then you can run really quick, go do what you need to do, and come back and start practicing. I also recommend this flute stand for students who are playing in an orchestra or a band. That way they have somewhere to put their flute when, say, they have like 72 measures of rest. But here is a really big no-no that unfortunately I see in bands sometimes. Students like to put their flutes right here on the stand and leave it. And I have seen so many flutes fall this way. So please, please don't ever do that. Okay, so that's this week's Tutorial Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me. Please take good care of your flute because your flute will take good care of you in return. But above all, remember, music isn't music unless you're having fun.